music with a string of hits like Mony Mony, Crimson and Clover, I Think We're Alone. Now the list goes on and on. Tommyy James rode the top of the charts through some of the most groundbreaking years in music history. Today, we're going to find out a little more of what went on behind the scenes, as told in his book, Me, the Mob, and the Music. Tommyy James, welcome back to PSYCHO
Thank
Babble.
you.
Good to have you here. Now, before we touch on some of the nuts and bolts of your career, I want to talk about kind of the overall magical element in that it seems like something that was supposed to happen. I mean, the whole story of Hanky Panky, which you recorded when you were 16 in Niles, Michigan?
Actually, it was 15.
15 in Niles, Michigan. Just local band, what, 1,000 copies or something like that?
That's right. Well, go ahead, do the intro. It set me
copies,
up.
It made a local flash and then just kind of disappeared and you're back to your job at the record store and stuff.
Right.
A couple years later, a DJ in Pittsburgh picks it up, starts playing it, boom, you're a star.
And then what happened?
And then let me tell you what me and Tommy did. It's just like, how can you not think, I was destined for this?
Well, you know something, it really was a miracle. Yeah. I mean, literally.
And that was just the launch. So with the success of Hanky Panky, you go to New York, you're being courted by every major record label, but when they all find out that Morris Levy at Roulette Records is interested in you, they all backed off like he's some kind of gangster or something.
Well, that's because he was.
Yeah.
But what happened was I picked up a crew in Pittsburgh, and by the way, I couldn't put the original band back together, so I sort of, when I went to Pittsburgh, I grabbed the first bar band I could find. They became the Shondells.
You are now the Shondells.
Right.
Okay.
And the new Shondells.
Right, okay.
And my first manager came from Pittsburgh, and together we went to New York to sell the master. So we get a yes from everybody. We got a yes from Columbia, Epic, RCA. You remember Kama Sutra at the time?
Yeah.
And the last place we took the record to was Roulette Records. And no particular reason, it was just the end of the day and we took it there. So the next morning, by the way, I go to bed that night feeling great because we had a thumbs up from all the majors. And the next morning, the phone starts ringing about 9 o'clock. And it's all these record companies that said yes the day before suddenly saying, listen, Tom, we got to pass.
Right.
And I said, what do you mean you got to pass? I thought we had a deal. And Jerry Wexler at Atlantic finally told us the truth, that Morris Levy, the head of Roulette Records, had called all these other record companies and said, this is my record, back off. And they did. Yeah. And scared him, and we were apparently going to be on Roulette Records. That was the first offer I couldn't refuse.
Exactly.
And of course, you know, the red flags went up, but we didn't really know what the deal was with Roulette. And as it turned out, when we did sign with Roulette, but the problem was that Roulette was not only a functioning record company and a good independent, but it was also a front for the Genovese crime family in New York, which made life real interesting.
Right.
And so the essence of our book is, although it's an autobiography, about 2/3 of it is devoted to this very tumultuous relationship, the story of the relationship, and the scary relationship with Roulette that we couldn't talk about.
Right. Well, and you're not, when you talk about mob influence with Roulette Records, this is not 6 degrees of separation. You had guys like Vinny the Chin Gigante hanging out at the record offices.
Regulars.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but your first business meeting with Morris was interrupted by a couple of guys who came to report on a job they had done for him.
Yes, that's right. All this is true too. You can't make this up. We're sitting there. We're meeting Morris Levy for the first time. And by the way, he was one of the most fascinating people I ever met in my life. You could not take your eyes off this guy because he was like watching a great actor as he'd go through the business and he'd talk like this and he'd grab your hand and it was like a catcher's mitt, you know.
Right.
And so we're sitting and he says, I hope you're ready, kid, because you're about to go on one hell of a ride. And all these cliches that were absolutely the truth. And so we're right in the middle of the meeting, and all the cast of characters from the Roulette are up there. And he says, oh, excuse me. And he goes over, and there's two guys by his office, and they're talking like this, and hey, Moishe, we got this, and what it was they had just come back from breaking some guy's legs out in Jersey who was pirating Morris's records. Well, you do what you got to do, you know. And we're trying to pretend we don't hear all this.
Right.
So Red Schwartz turned around and said, "Yeah, your first trip to New York, Tom?" And, yeah. So that was my first meeting of
19 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And again, to give some perspective on where you're at, you're 19 years old. You don't know nothing about New York, the music business, or
Right.
the mob. And the success of Hanky Panky, when it turned #1 in July of 1966, you knocked the Beatles and Frank Sinatra off the charts. 19 years old.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, you know, the funny part about all this is if we had gone with one of the corporate labels, I can tell you right now what would have happened, especially with a fluky record like Hanky Panky, is we would have been turned over to an in-house A&R guy, and that's probably the last time anybody would have ever heard from us.
Okay.
Maybe we would have been a one-hit wonder, and we had all the competition, you know, like at Columbia. At Roulette, they actually needed us.
Yeah.
And left us alone and allowed us to sort of morph into whatever we could become. And so at a creative level, we couldn't have picked a better place, but doing business was a disaster because crime doesn't pay,
Right.
you know.
It doesn't pay you, it pays him. But creatively, the 60s, again, you're a kid, this is your playground, you're experimenting. The success of Hanky Panky was followed up by Say I Am, and then I Think We're Alone Now.
Right.
But at a time when a lot of us think you're living the good life, your life seemed to be consumed with touring and finding the next hit record.
Well, that's true. That's true. Morris was really cracking the whip.
Yeah.
And but we were hard on ourselves too, because one of the first things I learned up there was that I'm alone in this, and I think I'm alone. And I really understood after Hanky Panky that nobody up at the record company really, including me, knew how I got there. I'll never forget, I was walking into Morris's office shortly after we signed, and I'm expecting some kindly grown-up to walk me through this and what's going to happen now, and then we're going to go to the studio, Tom, and we're going to do it. So I get into Morris's office, and he turns around and says, "Okay, kid, what's next?" And I'm like, and I said, "Oh, well, we're working on some new things," and I had nothing.
Right.
And we've got 2 or 3 things in the works, and so you know, everybody's saying, "Hey, I told you he's a smart kid, Moise." Yeah, he said, "Oh, good, you keep doing what you're doing." And I had nothing, and so at that moment, thank God, miracle number 2 is I met Bo Gentry and Richie Cordell, who came to me with "I Think We're Alone Now." And a whole lot of other things just at that moment before I started writing and producing myself.
Yeah,
And,
not to diminish your role. I mean, you have an ear for picking a hit.
well, I was just very, very blessed to have Bo and Richie there at that moment. They came from Kama Sutra and came over to Roulette and worked with me. And if I hadn't had them, my career could have ended right there very easily.
Yeah. Let's talk about the movie development of the book. Tell me
Sure.
about what's going on with the book as far as movie development.
Well, just give you a little background on it. Martin Fitzpatrick and I wrote the book. And we were originally going to call the book Crimson and Clover, and we were going to write a nice book about the hits and writing songs and stuff. But we got about a third of the way into it. It's about 8 years ago. We got about a third of the way into it and realized that if we don't tell the Roulette story, we're cheating ourselves and everybody else, because that is the story.
That's the story.
You know, the star of this show is Morris Levy.
Yeah.
And so I was nervous finishing the book that way because a lot of these guys some of these guys were still walking around. So in early '06, the last of the Roulette regulars, as I called them, passed on. And we felt we could finish the book. So we did. And we switched gears and really took the next 3 years and really told everything we could. I mean, we had to edit ourselves. You know, for every story that's in here, there's about 5 or 6 that we couldn't tell.
Yeah.
But or didn't have room for. But we finally finished it, and the moment we did, Simon and Schuster took it, and we were really very flattered by that, because they usually do presidential memoirs and things.
Mm-hmm.
They write about the mob guys.
Well,
so and then right after the book came out, we started getting calls for the movie rights and the book rights, and the Broadway rights. Right, and so Barbara DeFina, who produced Goodfellas, Casino, Hugo 2 years ago, The Last Temptation of Christ, The Color of Money, Cape Fear, so many really great movies, is going to produce our movie, Me, the Mob, and the Music, and we're just as proud as we can be.
That's awesome. Who do you want to play you? I need to ask that right off.
That is the worst question. I have no idea.
Okay,
I am.
really?
Anything I say is sort of pretentious, and I don't know.
I bet you have-
Walter Brennan.
Moni.
Come on, girl.
I bet you have a list.
Put your hands together.
I bet you have a list of people you don't want to play you.
Well, I do actually.
Steve Buscemi is out.
Well, all I can say is that these casting directors are amazing. They know all, and for Morris Levy, you probably want a new guy. I don't think you want a guy that you've seen 100 times play Morris Levy, because he's such a distinct character in this.
Wow.
And whoever he gets got to play guitar as badly as I do. So so that's a prerequisite right there.
But I hope they get the angle right, and I'm sure they will. It's a great track team. Not to get too schmaltzy, but we've read a million show business biographies where it becomes pretty apparent that fame and fortune don't buy you peace of mind, and that stuff's not going to help you when you hit the pillow at night. My take from the book is that your great success as a human being is that you were able to come to a point of forgiveness for Morris Levy.
Well, that's true. And, the bottom line here is that Morris Levy and my relationship, it was like the ultimate odd couple story. And I have a lot to be grateful for with Morris. The strange part is, even though we lost a lot of money up there, we've made a lot of it back. But my point is that Morris Levy was like, I guess you could say, an abusive stepfather. And but yet, if it wasn't for Morris Levy, there wouldn't be a Tommyy James.
Probably, yeah, I guess.
At least not the one we all know and
Right,
love.
that's exactly right. Well, and real quick, tell me about your YouTube channel.
Oh, yes. Well, the YouTube people came to me over the last holiday season and said, Tommy, listen, would you be interested in doing a YouTube channel? And I said, yeah, what's that? And they said, well, we're doing it with the artists who have a deep enough catalog so that you can, we have about 300 videos already up there.
Nice.
So they're going to collect all those, but then every 2 to 3 weeks, I'm putting up new videos. And I'm going to be recording new songs, making new records, and we're going to it's called Inside Tracks.
Nice.
And we're going to be taking the fans into the studio and concert dates, and talk about the hits, and talk about how this record was made, and all the questions that the fans usually ask.
Oh, that's great.
And so we're going to have little 5 to 8 minute vignettes, and it's going to be up every couple of weeks. So
we'll be looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Tommy, I know you're a busy man. You got to go yell at those noisy kids downstairs making all that racket. We appreciate you. Well, we appreciate everything you've done, with the music. We appreciate that you're still out there.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the movie. Thank you so much, Tommy. Keep doing what you're doing.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. This is Tommyy James, and you're listening to Psycho Babble. I think we're alone now.